Hello there, welcome to In My Opinion for Dreadout 2. Linda is the only survivor from a horrifying incident that ended up taking the lives of her friends from school. After some time, she tries to settle back into her life, but it's clear she still is affected by what happened. And her fellow classmates making groups that blame her for the deaths of her friends is not making things any easier. Linda then starts to notice some strange events and even finds herself being sucked in and out of some horrifying world. So it's up to her to find out why is she going through another nightmare and how is it connected to her. I did find myself interested in what was going on, and for the most part the game doesn't leave you hanging for an explanation. It even goes into a bit of Linda's past. There is sort of a cliffhanger ending, but not done in a shitty way. While I didn't think Linda didn't have the strongest personality showing here, you can tell by the little you see that she is kind and is still saddened by the loss of her friends. Which does leave you feeling pretty bad for her when all this shit starts happening. I do wonder if her personality shined a bit more in the first game. Speaking of that, if you never played the first part, the game does have a little summary video to catch you up. I appreciate this since the first game is still only on PC, so I never played it myself. This is a third-person horror game with two types of ways taking down the frightening spirits you'll be facing. One is your camera, which you must move around to get the perfect shot to cause some damage. You have the option to do quick shots or go for the stronger shots by holding down the fire button, which takes longer to come out. The other way to cause some pain is a more physical approach, as you're given some melee weapons during certain sections, mainly when your camera is on the fritz. The attacks are nothing special, but it's functional, and you can combine it with the flash on your phone to stun enemies, leaving them open to attack and even backstabs. When it comes to melee combat, things feel pretty okay. It's all about sticking and moving because if you get greedy with your attacks, you will get slapped around, and as I mentioned before, the flash is a big help during combat. The game also gives you just enough space to move around to chip away at the enemy, at least melee wise. Also, pulling off backstabs are not too difficult, and it does give you a gratifying feeling when you land one. I do like that since Linda is not some hardened warrior but instead just a teenage schoolgirl, that her swing animations match that. Now that I touched on the melee side of things, let's have a look at the camera, where some issues do arise. During certain fights, the camera will be needed to take down some spirits, and the game does let you know when to take the shot by having some static while aiming the camera. As mentioned, there is a quick and hold shot. The quick shot does less damage while the hold shot does more, but let me tell you, just forget about using that hold shot. The spirits tend to move around way too damn much that it's hard to nail down that shot, so you're better off taking quick shots since they are most likely to hit. Now while this does sound a bit annoying, I can say most of my picture experience was just a tad janky, but not too bad. It's just when certain factors come into play that it becomes fucking awful. These factors are things like the game sometimes putting you in a small area, which is a problem because the game does not let you know what direction the spirit is coming from. So you will find yourself getting smacked around, and by the time you center yourself and try to find the ghost, you'll just get blindsided once again. So you don't have enough reaction time to counterattack, and you can't really run away and gather yourself in such a tight spot. These flaws shine brightly in chapter 3, which is what I've been showing you. This chapter will have you cursing to the heavens and will make you either quit the game or you'll find enough patience to push forward. I was able to finally get by it, and in the video I'm showing you the best spot to handle the spirit. But let me tell you, I died a ridiculous amount of times. Another spot in this very chapter does the tight corner thing again with a fucking tiger spirit. The section after gives you more space and is easy to see how less frustrating it is when you're given room to breathe and have a better chance to actually see where the threat is coming from. The last hint I will give is about the final boss in this chapter, which is aim for the knife, since the camera is really wonky here when it comes to finding the weak spot. Before and after this chapter, these factors are not too much of an issue since they tend to give you much more space to get a shot, and I was able to have fun again after chapter 3. Now when you're not in combat, you're usually walking around different areas. You start with, and I'll probably butcher this name, the Muang district, where Linda's apartment is at, and as you make progress in the story, more locations appear. While exploring these areas, Linda can talk to people, and one of the cool things is if you check after each chapter, the dialogue of the NPCs do change, and some even comment on the strange stuff going on, giving a sense of time progression. There's even some dialogues that if you keep up with lead to interesting ends, and your camera can even reveal some little surprises. While in the Muang district, you'll run into Professor Mona, who has an interest in urban legends. Once you talk to her, you'll get the ability to find certain spots that when photographed unlock Indonesian urban legends you can read about. There is usually one or more hidden in the 6 of the 7 areas you can unlock. You do get some location hints from Mona, and you can also tell when one is near once your bracelet starts to glow blue. This is when you whip out your camera and try to find a sweet spot to snap, which I must admit can be a bit tough, as in one particular instance I was moving around for a while before I got it. To go along with your urban legends, you also have your Ghostpedia, which gives you info on the Indonesian spirits you have taken care of. I really love this type of stuff. Learning about other places' urban legends and spirit lore has always caught my interest, and I'm happy this game shares this. Heads up, if you're a trophy hunter, I suggest you collect all urban legends before you go up to the mountains to see the old lady. As even though you can get the urban legends you miss after beating the game, there's some weird glitch that it won't count for a trophy. There are side missions coming in a grand total of 2. Yeah, this is a bummer because the 2 the game has were fun to go through, focusing on 2 spirit encounters and their backstory that led them to their fate. I really would have loved to do even more of these side missions. At least they're pretty hard to miss, just to be sure to talk to people in the Moan district after each chapter. The game also has some light puzzles, with most of it being bring item here and some push these buttons in order puzzles. Nothing amazing, but hey, it's here. One thing that's kind of annoying while exploring is Linda's walk speed. She can feel pretty slow when you just want to walk around to talk to people. There is a run option, but it's more like a quick speed boost before resuming walking speed. I will say the speed boost does come in handy at least when fighting bosses, as it lets you dodge some attacks easier. Speaking of boss fights, they can be fun and pretty tense, but then you have some like chapter 3 boss fights that are flat out cheap and anger inducing, which I explained why already. After beating the game, you unlock chapter select in case you miss anything, and now you can change Linda's outfit even to her original look from the first game. The game looks pretty good, and I do like that each chapter does take place in a different locale, so you're not just in the same spot, as you got places like a hotel and hospital, and the spirit versions of these areas can differ a bit from their normal versions. Atmosphere is always really important in these games, and I have to say it does a great job. While nothing out of the ordinary is happening, the areas do feel lived in. But once it starts heading to the spirit realm, there's an oppressive atmosphere with some good sound as well, which does suck you in. The game also doesn't rely heavily on jump scares, which does lead to some truly great moments that catch you off guard. The character models themselves ain't bad looking, with our lead looking a bit better than the other characters. The spirit designs look great and terrifying. The sounds they produce also help to add to the atmosphere. This is especially true for the bosses you run into, who really stand out. When it comes to voice acting, there is a mix of English and Indonesian. Basically, Linda and whoever is important speaks English, while everyone else speaks Indonesian. This mix didn't bug me too much, and I do appreciate the dub. In fact, the English voice work does come off pretty good. When it comes to the technical side of things, you can tell this game's frame rate is not consistent, as there are points, mainly when you're walking around, that do feel like 60 FPS. But you do notice some of the drops. Though even with this, it never really took me out of it. There was also a bug I ran into while playing, which was during a boss fight. The boss kinda got stuck and I couldn't hurt it. And another time I just got stuck in a corner in a certain area. Luckily, this was not super common, and when it does happen, the autosave system is pretty good, and all I had to do was restart my checkpoint, and I didn't lose much progress.
Finally, my favorite student has come to visit. Did you miss me? Shh, don't answer that. That was rhetorical. Listen. Your heartbeat. I can hear it. Anger. Self-doubt. And is that guilt, perhaps? Poor girl.
Look, this game has some problems that really shine through in chapter 3. But I think it shows how much I was enjoying myself that I was able to push through that to get back to the fun. I love the atmosphere and spirit lore, and while I think the gameplay can use some fine tuning, it did click for me most of the time. It took me maybe around 6 hours to beat the game, and when it comes to replay value, there ain't much unless you miss some urban legends and spirits. If you have some interest in horror games, especially ones that expose you to spirits and legends from other places, then I really recommend this one, as even with its issues, you won't have a completely dreadful time. I hope you enjoy my thoughts on this game, and for gamer's sake, keep gaming.